Hey everybody, Trevor Nelson. Thanks so much for tuning in to another HGA free webinar. We just wrapped with our friend David Rhode, the author of Passion Isn't Enough, and we did everything boards. Everyone in the nonprofit space faces some kind of challenge with a board member, a board president, finding the right board members, all the above. And we touched on everything. We spent an hour with David. It was awesome. We gave away a book to every single person that was in attendance live on the webinar. So that was really cool. A good friend of ours, Kenzie, won a golden ticket at the end. So that should also motivate you to join us next week, February 6th. We're going to be joined by Amy Myers and Susanna Doyle from MDA. We're going to talk about pre-event fundraising, but back to the board webinar. Amazing episode. How to model good behavior to motivate the board, how to have difficult conversations to get that, persnickety board member doing the right thing again, for instance, because they did the right thing at some point. That's how they ended up on your board. So stuff like that, really cool. Hope you all enjoy it. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, sign up for your spot on the webinar next week. Can't thank you enough for watching. Enjoy the episode. Give everybody about a minute or so more to get in. I see some familiar names. I see some new names. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you're watching this on the recording, if you're seeing this on YouTube, we would love to have you get your feedback. Please, cool. If you've got any questions or comments, things you agree with, disagree, we love to get that. And so thank you so much for being here and watching, being with us today. We appreciate you being here. So
much. Yeah.
So let's get rolling, man. Oh, cool, and stay to the end because we're gonna give something away.
Some stuff to give away. We're teasing one of the gifts right now. Actually, David's got it right there in his screen. But everybody, do me a favor. Welcome David Rhode. He's the author of Passion Isn't Enough. Jason just got his copy yesterday and is already looking through the different chapters and what have you. We had the good fortune of meeting David, and David came on our podcast, Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money. Check that out when you get a chance. That episode was awesome. But it was the impetus for this conversation because for some reason we just latched onto boards and the challenges that inevitably come up with every organization with their board and getting the board motivated, engaged, doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, as a matter of fact. And we've had that conversation. That's where I told David, I was like, pretty much every week, we could be talking about the silent auction and someone will chime in the chat or have a question, be like, yeah, but I can't get my board on, or I can't get my committee on board with this, that kind of thing. So it's just good that we're having this conversation. Can't thank you enough, David, for coming. David, with PenPAC, are you on the board right now? Are you sitting on a board right now?
I am not on any nonprofit boards. With PenPAC, I am actually the deputy director of the organization.
Gotcha.
And I'm supporting a lot of nonprofit organizations and their boards through my coaching work, but I'm not on a board right now.
Okay.
But I've run my own board when I had my own nonprofit for 15 years. And so I had a front row seat for that.
Totally. Yeah. So basically I knew there was so much experience there, and Jason's been on numerous boards and ran boards and committees, and I've had the good fortune of being on committees. No boards at the moment or anything like that either, but yeah, just really cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. My name is Trevor Nelson. I'm the co-founder of HGA Fundraising. My partner is also the co-founder of HGA Fundraising, Jason Ledlow, and we are HGA Fundraising. We provide the most profitable auction items in fundraising. That's pretty much all you're going to hear about us. So let's get into it. Jay, do you have anything that you want to do as far as just kicking it off, a particular question?
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of jump into things. One is, I really appreciate it. I was telling whenever we first popped on, I just got my hands on the book yesterday, and I'm really was able to get through quite a bit of it really quick because the way the book's very well put together. It is more of a how-to manual. In fact, it says, a practical guide. There's a lot of times as I said, it's not a lot of pontificating and talking about, well, this is an idea and all this stuff. It's really in the weeds, down and dirty, how to do these things. And so since we're really talking about boards and it comes up all the time, I'm going to ask David my question that I ask every board member anytime I talk to a board or I'm working with a group or anytime like that. I always ask them a question. I said, what is a board's job?
Well, first of all, Trevor, Jason, I mean, we're here. We're at the epicenter of the nonprofit world with the three of us. We're going to solve the world's problems today. You know, the notion of boards and board challenges is so universal, it's so ubiquitous that, you know, that's why so much of it is embedded in a variety of chapters throughout the book. And that was really what drove me to write the book, is that I was hearing from the people that I was involved with as a nonprofit coach of CEOs. I'm hearing the same challenges over and over again, regardless of what part of the sector they're in, regardless of what geography people are from. So when you take a step back on the issue of what are boards expected to do, there's really some broad areas, and the first one is setting the organizational strategy, and how that translates for most nonprofits is the creation of some kind of a strategic plan. And normally the board is, you know, very much involved in that. There's usually some kind of a subcommittee that's working on strategic planning. Board members are part of that. But when you go through the strategic planning process, and I give them these very specific tools that you can use when you're trying to engage the full board, you can get everybody's perspective. What do we do well? What don't we do well? What are the opportunities that are out there? What are the threats to us? And you use some kind of a survey technique to get this information, and you can consolidate that into a SWOT analysis. And that can really become the impetus for creating a strategic plan for your organization. So first is setting the organizational strategy. The second thing that boards do is they're really there to make sure that the programs and the organization is operating in an effective manner. So before you expand into a new geography or add new programs or do this, that, and the other, there should be an extensive conversation with the board about what you're doing. And the board's job is to make sure that sort of the infrastructure is in place, that the dynamics that have enabled you to be successful with one program apply equally to another program or another geography. So they're meant to be a sounding board and a thought partner for the staff in order to make sure programming is running the way it should. The other thing, one of the big responsibilities is on the aspect of financials. So, you know, the board is there to approve the 990, you know, your annual tax return. They're there to approve the financials, and they're really there to be a partner as the budget is set and approved for the operations for that coming year. And this is where they get to weigh in. They bring their varied experiences to the budget process, and many executive directors, nonprofit CEOs, they might not have a lot of financial background in their professional experience. So this is where boards can really add a lot of value, and maybe budgets and financials aren't all that sexy, for lack of a better term, but like this is where the critical decisions get made. You have a certain amount of money. How are you going to allocate it? Are you spending it in the right ways, in the right areas? And those are the kind of decisions that boards can be involved in. The other side of the finances is really boards help attract the resources. It's one of the main things that, you know, boards are expected to do is to reach into their networks and not only make a gift personally, but try to help attract others to do so. And then the last thing that boards do, and then we'll move on, is their job is to hire and evaluate the CEO. So, you know, they are effectively the boss of the staff leadership, and they are many times bringing that person on board. And when that person's in place, making sure there's a rigorous process to make sure that they're performing according to expectations.
You know, I appreciate those things because it's all true. I agree with everything that you said. One of the things that I think is a misunderstanding, though, that happens with a lot of board members is they don't really understand what their responsibility is. And I think it's incumbent upon organizations, and, you know, I don't care what size, because I've talked to, you know, $100 million organizations and $250,000 organizations. They still have the same things. And one of the things that I've found is I asked two questions. I said, does everybody here raise your hand if you understand that you are legally and financially responsible for this organization? And I see sometimes, you know, I get this look like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And I'm like, no, that means if this place gets sued, you're going to be named, or there's a good chance that you're going to be named. Or if there's a financial issue, it's going to fall on you. And they don't really, it's like they really haven't thought that through. They thought this was just some place to come and to have some cookies and have some punch, maybe a cup of coffee, maybe a glass of wine, and they're going to sit there and catch up with a few people once a month and talk about some programs and stuff, and maybe we can do some good stuff. So give me your take on that, where you think, maybe boards are missing people that are serving in this capacity.
Well, I think the thing that you're touching on, Jason, and the thing that I emphasize ad nauseum is whatever expectations you have of a prospective board member, those should be laid out in writing, and there should be a conversation with that prospective board member in advance of them saying, yeah, this sounds like something I should do. Too often, it's like, I love what you guys are doing. Can I be on your board? And then the staff leader is so flattered that this person wants to be part of the board, like, oh my gosh, we'd love to have you. And then the person's on the board. And then 3 and 6 months later, they're starting to figure out what's actually expected of a board member.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole wrong sequence. Whatever your expectations are in terms of time, you might be, some organizations have meetings. I just was talking to somebody, their board meets every 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, there's other boards that meet every 3 months. There's some that meet whatever. So whatever that cadence is, it should just be articulated so people know what they're getting involved with from a time perspective. People should know what's expected of them from a financial perspective. Are they expected to, raise $10,000, $100,000, just make a gift of any size? Whatever those requirements are, those should be spelled out. What you're talking about in terms of the financial responsibility and the legal responsibilities, that should be articulated, and it should be put forth in the conversation to let them know, by the way, yes, you are a fiduciary of this organization, but you should also know that we have directors and officers liability insurance. Mm-hmm. So you will be protected. Your job is to just make sure that you are performing as a normal board member. Your duties of care and loyalty should just be enabling you to just show up, read the stuff we ask you to read, and give us your best thinking, and you'll be fine. Nothing's gonna happen because we're gonna act in a responsible manner. But yes, your point is well taken, that if things go sideways, then the board is going to be named and the board will be protected. But they should know that there's no stockholders per se in the nonprofit sector.
That's right.
The sort of the rubber meets the road when it comes to the board of directors, and they're part of that.
Well, and I think you said something really, really good, because a lot of times everybody's like, well, I can't get my board to do this and my board won't do that, and I can't get it. But it really goes back to exactly what you said. Why is that person on the board? Well, they're really, gosh, Trevor's a really nice guy, and he's just always got a great attitude, and, he's always fun. I think he really cares about what we do. Let's get him on our board. And then nobody ever has a conversation. So Trevor has no idea what that really is. And I think, you mentioned something about having these things in writing, and an onboarding process is what I believe you talked to, and you probably have that in the book, to do that. But you brought something else up, and I think this is a really, really key thing that I see come up over and over again. And every board that I've ever been on there was a component of this. I always tell people, the first thing is boards are there for the oversight. You're there, hire and fire the CEO, oversight, but you're here to raise money. And that can be done in a couple of ways. So talk to us about, you said give, get. You've got a section in your book, give, get. So talk to us about that, because I think that's really a great way to get board members involved, because a lot of times they'll say, well, I can't give at that capacity.
Sure. I mean, the give get component is something that is common. It's not the only way to ask board members to participate financially, but essentially what it means is, if you're asking each of your board members to deliver a target, let's say it's $10,000, just to keep the conversation simple from that perspective, then they would have two choices. They can give, meaning they can just write a check for $10,000 and satisfy that requirement. They may not want to bother other people. They may not have the time for this, that, and the other, but they want to make sure that they're pulling their weight financially, and so they'll write the check, or they'll donate stock, or they'll do whatever they want to do equivalent to that amount. Mm-hmm. However, many people don't have those personal resources. And so let's say in that situation, they can say, I can write a check for $1,000. I'm happy to do that, but I'm going to commit to going and bringing in the other $9,000. So that's the get portion of it. And what our responsibility is, and really what I found myself doing as an executive director, was if I had 10 board members, then I had 10 development plans, for board members 1 through 10. It could look very different. Jason, you might be the kind of person that wants to take a couple buddies golfing and can see them each writing a check for $2,500. And so, maybe we go out there, we have a foursome, and we grab lunch and we talk it over. And Trevor might be the kind of guy who's like, well, I know a lot of people, but I don't know enough people that can write big checks. So we might develop a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign with Trevor, and we'll set up a fundraising page for him, and we'll give him the language and the tools and coach him on how to support that. And other people might have different means altogether. So, our job is to really support the board members and using the sort of the common phrase of meet them where they are, and try to develop a fundraising plan that they're comfortable with, that fits with their vision for how they want to engage their personal and professional network, or not in some cases. And in the cases where they don't want to, that's fine. They can solve it all the old-fashioned way. They can just write the check and meet the needs accordingly. The money's the money to the nonprofit. Now, ultimately, I'd actually rather have them write a check for a portion and go engage other people, because in that sense, we're expanding the pipeline, we're expanding the community of people that are involved with us, and then we can cultivate them. And then the following year, they could attract new people to the organization, and then our network of supporters continues to grow. So it's really important, though, that we train our board members and give them the tools so that they feel comfortable engaging others. And many times they don't have to make the ask. All they have to do is make the introduction. And then we, as the staff leadership, it's our job to kind of close those individuals and to help them understand the impact the organization is having, with the blessing of the person that made the introduction to us.
Let me ask a dumb question. Let me ask a dumb question really quick, if you don't mind me interjecting. Is that something that can you have that conversation about how someone, like getting an idea of how Jason would go about doing it, how I would go about doing it, or any person? Would you have that conversation before they're even on the board?
Sure, you can, because I think, again, we've laid this out in our board roles and expectations, and I'm having a phone call with this prospective board member, and I'm literally walking them through point by point what is going to be demanded of them. Just so they don't think it's, I don't want any surprises. Full transparency. This is what being involved with us is going to look like. It's not for everybody. Fine. And in that case, I would say yes. There's a couple ways to get there, but some people want to solve the math this way. Other people want to solve the math that way. We will support you either way. But it's not a dumb question, because we want them to understand that there's no right way to do it. And we will be creative, and we will be supportive regardless of what approach they take.
Cool. Yeah.
Do you recommend on that note that every board member has to contribute financially in some capacity?
100% board participation is mandatory. So
I appreciate that. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Now, I've redefined that for many folks in terms of a gift that's personally meaningful to them, or when is in our organization, what I said is what we want to be is one of the top 3 organizations you support philanthropically. So for some people that could be $100. For other people that could be 5 figures. But especially if your board is trying to attract younger members and do some other things who may not be as secure financially and just maybe in a different sort of part of their journey, versus maybe people that are more established in their careers, where they have more resources and they have more connections to people that are also established professionally. So it is important to have 100% participation. For many grant funders, they will demand clarity around that. And I mean, I don't see there's any benefit to lying about that. I mean, people should be supporting the organization. If they're not willing to write some kind of a check, then they're really just, there's a lot of people that believe in your organization, and they have to have some skin in the game. And, it's sort of fundamental to me. I don't appreciate why that may be a challenge for some people, but even in harder times, people should be able to write a check to, if it's an organization they care deeply about.
Yeah. Well, if it's, I used it this way. I had somebody, they were asking me, well, somebody, they really can't do it. And I said, then they probably don't need to be on your board, because if they can't make a small enough gift, a nominal gift of some kind, whatever that may be. I was on a board where the minimum you had to be was at least the President's Club. That meant you give $1,000 over a year. It's $83 a month. And you know, the thing we were talking about one day, because they were saying, should we keep that or not? And I said, well, if you can't do $83 a month, you probably don't need to be on the board because you're starving to death. And if you don't have that kind of a connection to this organization that you're willing to make that sacrifice, then maybe that's not the right fit because you're not going to be all in. And I think that was, you know, the thing for me, whenever I've communicated that is, are you all the way in for this organization? Because
Right. I
that's
mean,
what we're
the
looking for.
most powerful words in fundraising are join me. So
Yeah,
I've
I
made
love
this
that.
commitment to the organization. It means the world to me, and I want you to join me in supporting it. Now, if I'm not willing to make it, how can I ask people in my world to make a financial contribution of some kind if I'm not willing to do the same thing? That doesn't mean people's circumstances can't change. People could lose their job or something could happen in the
Sure.
short term. And of course, you make accommodations for things of that nature. But as a general principle, if you can't say join me, then you don't belong on the board. You can be a friend of the organization. You can be involved in many other ways. You can be a volunteer. You can do a lot of things. But board leadership is, the other word is leadership. If you're not leading by example, then that's not, or then being on the board is just not for you. So we don't have to overthink it. I'm with you 100%.
What's your take on board members rotating off the board?
Like term
So,
limits? Just
Yeah, term limits.
yeah, I had a question about that
so
as well. Yeah.
yeah, I don't believe in maximum number of terms. So I believe in term limits in the sense of let's say it's a 3-year cycle, so that you then have to be voted back on after 3 years. But I also don't believe in, like, I've seen organizations which, let's say, have a maximum of 2 terms. So you
Mhm.
might have your best board members who are doing all the right things, and after 6 years, you're saying goodbye to them. To me, I'm not sure what the logic is behind that. I'm a believer in board accountability. I'm a believer in having systems in place to evaluate your board members on an annual basis. Are they attending board meetings? Are they making a gift? Are they attracting board prospects? Are they coming to your events? All the things. And if they're not, then come the end of their 3-year term, then you don't have to extend an invitation for them to come back to the board. They haven't performed. And in the meantime, you'll probably have had multiple conversations with them about their performance and say, I know we both agreed that these things are important, but for whatever reason this past year, it seems like you weren't able to meet some of those commitments. How do you feel about that? In many cases, I've found it's easier. People will opt off the board and they'll say, things have just changed for me. And your job as the executive director is to, first of all, thank them for everything they've done, because I'm sure they've made a meaningful contribution at some point in time. And then to say, people's circumstances change, and I don't want you to feel bad about coming up short. If it's okay with you, I'd like to try to find somebody else who's willing to take on those responsibilities and fill your seat. Is that something you're okay with? Or if they say, no, I really want to stay, then you say, well, okay, then let's work together to get back on track, because we know and agreed that these are the things that board members should be doing.
Yeah. Jennifer, great point, David. And you just eloquently laid out like the thing that we call the difficult conversation with the board
Right.
member with stagnation.
Uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that ad nauseum. It's something, once again, that expectation needs to be set early, often, obviously consistent. Jennifer brings up a great point, and this also lets me remind folks, get some questions going. We have David for another 35 minutes. This is awesome. This is amazing. Obviously, you want to pick up a copy. Rhino put a link to pick up a copy of the book as well on Amazon if you like. But Jennifer has a great question that it comes up so often. The conversation about the board members not meeting expectations. Should that come from the board president, executive director, all the above? David, speak to that, would you? Thank you, Jennifer, as well.
It is a great question. And I think in an ideal world that comes from the board president. So the board members are holding each other accountable. It's not a staff member holding the board member accountable.
That
It's
we
the
don't have to put
board.
that burden on the ED, right? Or the CEO.
Right. Now,
Right?
in practice,
Yeah.
it's probably the executive director like 75% of the time. But
Right.
that conversation should be a 3-way conversation. It should be the board president, the executive director, and the person whose sort of participation or performance is in question. So you want to coach up the board president so that they could manage those conversations, and they could take ownership of that role. But in the beginning, it might need to be a shared responsibility with the executive director. So in an ideal world, it's the board president. In an ideal world, the board president is running the board meetings. There's many organizations where that happens. That's sort of the way it's set up, where it's their meeting, it's their agenda, and the executive director has a report or is there to answer any questions and things of that nature. In practice, the executive director is running those board meetings, I don't know, 75, 80% of the time, especially in the smaller organizations, maybe where the boards are less established. And so there's a different relationship with the board and the board president. But I would always want the board to sort of have agency and to be taking as much responsibility for their meetings, their agendas, their sort of holding each other accountable wherever possible.
Yeah, it's some of the problem.
Well,
Jennifer, if the board president being part of the problem is also not an uncommon dynamic. And sometimes, and I've had to fire board members, I've had to fire board presidents, and sometimes board president, and it's really just, again, a conversation around, this is what the board president is responsible for. Are you comfortable doing those things? I've noticed that you seem to be comfortable doing A, B, and C, but D, E, and F, it doesn't seem like you're comfortable with that. And they say, I'm really not comfortable with that. And then the point would be, well, if you're not, do you think it would make sense for us to try to find somebody who is comfortable doing all of these things? Because those things are what's required for the board president to be effective in their job and for the board to operate as an entity, in the way that we envision. So if that's the case, then they have the choice of taking on those responsibilities, or they have the choice of saying, that's just not for me.
That's a really good point. I think it is. I mean, it is. And that's why I brought up the whole thing about, term limits, the first thing about having, terms and term limits and things like that, because sometimes you see somebody where you've got, and no one is willing to hold, no one wants to break the news. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows this person needs to go, and nobody wants to break the news. So this is where I'd like to, my next question, and have you comment on the best boards I've ever been around, served on, have worked with, had a very high level of accountability. They, there was those difficult conversations. They had those uncomfortable conversations up front to say, as a board member, this is what is expected. And it was not just the CEO or the executive director that was doing it. It was the board president talking to them and saying, look, this is how we run this ship around here. This is what's expected. This is what you have to do. This is what it is. It's not a free ride. You're not going to come. This is not a social hour. We all like each other, but we're here to do a job, and we have that expectation. And holding that accountability really high. The boards that I've participated in have been exceptional. The ones that weren't quite so, the ones that had all the problems, they just let it go. And I've actually, and I was going to see if you maybe had an example of how you've seen someone in that situation turn it around. Maybe you've got experience yourself where you've turned that around because you've seen where they didn't have all the things, the fundamentals going, and they brought that around, and what that was like to convert that board to being efficient where maybe it was not as efficient before.
Yeah, I mean, I had the experience personally. I mean, and we didn't have board accountability and board reviews for the first X number of years of Pitching for Baseball and Softball, the organization that I founded. I made all the classic mistakes in the early years of bringing in the wrong people, people that were sort of friends and family, and all of that. And then as the organization scaled and we wanted to have a broader impact, I had a different vision of who was going to be on the board, and I had to turn the board over a couple of times. And that was sort of a natural process, actually, over time. I wish I knew better. I wish my future self was able to coach my previous self, but that's not the case. And so I think as long as you, again, and maybe transparency would be like the key word for everything, but say, this is the process that we're going to use to evaluate each other. This is the words from the board president, not the staff leadership. And this is, and we're going to count on the staff leadership to keep track of these things, and they'll help us complete these, but we're all going to be held accountable. We're going to hold a mirror up to ourselves, and we're going to say, how do we do? This is the report card. The report card is going to be, we're going to know, it's like your kids in school, they have a rubric from the teacher. Okay, well, here's the rubric up front. We're going to expect you to do X and Y and Z. Do those things seem fair? Is there anything about this rubric you think we should change? Something we should take away, something we should add, something we should clarify? And they should be part of the creation of the system that's going to be holding them accountable. So that doesn't come as a surprise. And then at the end of the year, they're going to see the report. Okay, well, did really well here, 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 and not so well here, here, and here. And then you could say, that's not bad. Let's see if we can build on that for next year. And it seems like you're really comfortable up here, but not so much here. Let's work on it. So like, I don't think information, I think we stress about information and make it too personal. I think really it's about improvement. It's around the organization. This is what the organization needs. The organization needs this from its board members. It's not like you're bad. It's like we need to do these things. We need to bring in new board members. Board members are the people that need to be helping to identify other new board members. You haven't nominated anybody in the last 2 years. Let's talk about it. Like, I'm sure you know people. So, do you need more information? Do you need more encouragement? How can we solve that? So I think the information is powerful. I think the sharing of it doesn't have to be an attack. I think it can be constructive. And if the person continues to underperform, then you might have a decision to make at some point. I looked at it like this. I would think of it as like my NBA roster. So I had like 12 seats, and I was kind of looking at the end of each year. I got the draft coming up. I'd really like to add a lottery pick, really somebody could break into the top 5. And I have to lose somebody off the bottom of the roster. That's sort of the natural evolution of things, right? Something's going to change. Somebody's circumstances are going to change. And we're going to bring somebody in, and that new energy is going to really energize the team and provide, a new way for us to score, a new way for us to win, a new way for us to this and that. That's enough of the analogy. But the point is, I wanted that to be my mindset. I didn't want to feel dread about letting somebody go and bringing people in. I kind of thought that was the way things were supposed to be. And I really wanted new energy, because boards also can just become complacent. If it's the same faces and the same voices and the same shortcomings of everybody, then it becomes a little bit drudgery. And I think it's important to inject new energy in any culture.
I love a good sports analogy, David, and and I love it because scoreboards and stat sheets and win and loss columns don't lie. They're right out there front and center. And I think we could all take a page out of that, right? In our, when it comes just accountability in any part of our life and our lives. And I think that we miss that with this head scratching, position that we find so many organizations in with their board, right? And you said something interesting. I wanted you to kind of just double click on the idea of, it doesn't need to be an attack, right? I mean, people have so much trepidation about having that conversation. Even Jennifer's, question and comment, about the board president is some of the problem. We hear that a lot. It's way more common than we probably lead on. So, I mean, and I love the idea that you said, don't do it one-on-one, make it, a 3-way conversation, for instance, with the CEO, another board member in this case, for instance, but, give us some soft skills, for instance, just putting a label on it, that you would use to have that conversation and not make it feel like an attack. Would you go back to hey, this is where we were, this is where we started, we're not there now, that kind of thing,
Well, I think any conversation, whether it's with a donor or with a board member, has to start from a place of gratitude. First of all, when you start a conversation, you have done so much for the organization, and that doesn't have to be a precursor to, and here's the swift kick in the hind end to send them out the door. But it's I think it's important to remind people that we wouldn't be where we are without them. And so that's sort of the first part. But it needs to be genuine. And so that's where I always start. The second thing I would say is, being on the board is a huge responsibility, and it's something that, we all take seriously. I know you take it seriously, and I know you show up all the time, you this, you that. and there's so much of what you're done on the board that provides great leadership, but there are also some other areas where I think that you can improve. And I want to be here to kind of support you and talk about it. I'm not here to make you feel bad, but I am here to tell you that like this is what the organization needs. And if you don't think you're capable of it, I'd be surprised, because I know you and I know how creative and how committed you are. So let's just put it out on the table and let's attack it together. And so if you're in it together, I think that's the most important thing. You're not making it their problem.
Yeah.
You're making it the organization's problem, and you're going to work on it together, and you're going to just be really specific. I would say that if there's 3 things that you're not comfortable with, bringing up all 3 is probably not the way to go. Bring up the one that you want to solve the most, that's got the biggest impact for you, and work on that. Because if you start like piling it on, then it's going to feel like too much weight. So we might have to pick our battles, as the expression goes, and focus our energies around the one that you feel is the most mission critical at that time. And then if you're able to solve that, then maybe 6 months later, you can bring up number 2 on the list or whatever. But I wouldn't really want to pile on with somebody. I would really want to highlight the one area that you think needs the most attention, come up with a plan together to how to improve upon it, and see if they're willing to, recommit to a better outcome over the next reasonable period of time, 3, 6, 9 months.
Sounds like just a human approach, and kind of how you'd want to talk to anybody if you wanted to change the
I
outcome.
think so, because like how would you, I guess that you really touched on it, Trevor. Imagine instead of you having the conversation with somebody else, somebody's having the conversation with you. Somebody's bringing this to your doorstep. How would you want it to come to you? How would you want it to be presented? How would you want to like come out of that conversation? And if we put ourselves and we come from a sort of a position of empathy, I think we're going to be much better off. We might be feeling tons of pressure, but we can't let what we're feeling sort of enter that conversation. We've got to compartmentalize. We've got to create this place where we can have an adult conversation, but not an attacking conversation.
I love that. There's a other side of the coin that just went off in my mind about motivating the board, keeping them engaged, keeping the pipeline full, right? For building that community, right? Around that, and people they know and what have you. It's probably, underutilized, but you said, start with thank you and start with gratitude. The same way you would talk to a donor, an investor, someone that's investing in the organization, for instance, you start there. Obviously it's important that we applaud the board members, or anyone for that matter. And I think sometimes no news is good news in any part of our life. I mean, it could be that way with your wife or husband or your children. It's like, they're doing a great job. I won't even tell them about it. You know what I mean? Because they just do a great job all the time. Oh my gosh. Like, I think that's also, there's another, like I said, side of the coin where it doesn't have to be, tragic what's happening and we have to have this difficult conversation. When it comes to, once again, motivating folks and getting them out there and getting them to find, potential board members and just supporters moving forward. Do you think that, is it your experience that that's not probably happening as often as it should when it comes to just like the applause or the congratulations or the thank you?
So,
yeah.
I think this notion, when you get a board together, starting with a sort of a success story that's taken place within the last period of time, and being cognizant of if it's the same person all the time, then just, oh, this is the superstar, and then everybody else is feeling bad. So you want to rotate that around. But it's like, hey, Trevor, you brought in, you brought in this gift in the last few months from so and so. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that came about, and just give them the spotlight and let them talk it through. And what you want to do is just model good behavior, and say, were you stressed about this? I really was. I was really nervous about asking this person for money. But what I realized is I was worried about all the wrong things. I was making it more complicated than it needed to be. I just should have just trusted myself and trusted the organization and followed your guidance and whatever. And as soon as I got the words out, they jumped in right away and did what I asked them to do. And next time I'm going to feel more comfortable and more confident. But anyway, just like letting this stuff play out, letting them talk it through, letting other people hear. And it's also okay to put like the fears and the other things out in the open and talk about them once in a while, and let people just like, why are you when you go to fundraise, what's your biggest fear? My biggest
Okay.
fear is I'm going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask for too much money. I'm going to lose them as a friend, or I'm going to ask them for money and they're going to ask me for money, and yada, 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 whatever the things are.
Yeah.
So let's put it out there. It's okay.
Talk
Like
it through,
this is
man. Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
it through, and have some of the other board members talk about, like, okay, has anybody else had this thought, and how do they navigate it, and just like normalize it, and walk through it. These people are probably very successful in other parts of their personal or professional lives. They've solved problems before, but yet we get all like, we wring our hands over fundraising like we're gonna, set off a nuclear warhead if we do it wrong. Like, just ask people.
Yeah.
It's
Have
okay. If
conversation.
they
Yeah.
say yes, great.
Yeah.
If they say no, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But like, we know the answer is no 100%. Like, you're going to miss all the shots you don't take. That's the analogy, right? So,
Yeah.
If you don't ask, it's a
whatever.
guaranteed no.
It's a
Yeah.
guaranteed no.
I
We
love
know that.
yeah. We've had this conversation about no, because we're fundraisers, right? We talk about fundraising, that's what we do, right? And I've heard some great things. We had a guest on, and she said, no just tells me what direction I need to go.
Yeah,
I have
maybe is bad. Maybe is
yeah,
bad.
right.
Yeah, I
No
don't
is
like
fine.
maybes.
No is fine. Yes is better, but maybe is death.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need maybe. And I've always told people, if I'm asking, if you're not, if when you say maybe, you really mean no, it's okay if you say no. If the maybe is you really do want to think about this and you need some time, that's fine. I'm happy to support that. But I really want to force people into a yes no decision, as early as possible, because it's not that complicated.
Totally.
Fundraising is not that complicated. Supporting an organization is not that complicated. If we're hearing a lot of no's, then we need to hold a mirror up in front of ourselves and figure out what's wrong with our approach. That's fine.
Yeah. I think you and I had this conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong, David. We have a lot of conversations. I know you do too. Did we talk about this on the podcast where we were just like, just like, we might not be for everyone? Did we have that conversation? I think that we did on the pod.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I
hey,
think
listen, it's like maybe him, it's like this, that, and everything. It's like, you can't be everything to everyone, right? Like, not everyone's going to give. So I think accepting that as well. And that could be a lesson for the board or the prospective board when they're going out in the community or just going out in the world to get the dollar.
Right. But let's assume 25% of the people that you talk to are going to say yes.
Okay.
So
cool.
now our responsibility is to talk to more than 4 people, first of all.
Yeah.
Imagine then let's say we need to talk to 40 people, because we do want 10 yeses. And so now we got to play the numbers game. And so I think people do have this built-in fallacy that if I ask 10 people are going to say yes to me. Like, that is setting an unrealistic expectation and then making them feel like they've come up short. So I think, we do have to understand that there's a certain amount of failure. Maybe we're going to throw another one at you. Bat 300, you're going to make the Hall of Fame. So it's okay. Let's ask more people. Let's take more swings, and let's keep it moving. And it doesn't mean you can't go back to people that have said no. You can go back to them in the future and say, hey, by the way, this great thing happened with our organization. We're continuing to grow. I just wanted to share this with you. And maybe they decide to get involved at a future point in time. But no is part of any sales function. And when we are in fundraising, we are effectively in sales for our organization. And we just have to embrace it. That is the reality of it. And what we need to do is feel really committed to our product, really confident that the organization's doing important work. And if we feel that in our hearts, that will come through. And if people know that is a very important thing in your life, then they will support you. And I underline the word you, and I think Jason and you all both know this, which is, people support people, not organizations, generally speaking. And so,
totally.
and if somebody that's important in my life asks me for financial support for an organization that matters to them, I don't really care what the organization is. I mean, I'm interested, but I'm really interested in supporting my friend. Because it's clearly something that matters to them and they matter to me. And so therefore I'm going to step up for them in the way that they've asked me to, if I can. And so, that is the essence of it. Now, then it's our job to educate people so that do become more attached to the organization, and they don't just support it because Trevor supports it. They support it because it means something to them because they understand what the organization is doing and they want to see it succeed. They want to see it have its impact. But, in the beginning, it's really just about supporting people.
I love that.
Hey,
Yeah.
David, we're coming up on, we got about 10 minutes left. We'll stop right on time and be finished. We've got a couple things to give away. But in your book, you said passion isn't enough. And, I think that's something that happens whenever somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit. My first response is don't do it. Go find somebody you can go help fundraise and go do all this because there's a lot of stuff to it. So give us some stuff, because obviously you went down that path. You started a nonprofit, probably like most people that do, have no idea what in the world you're getting into other than you just have a passion. So expound on that just as a closing piece, if you don't mind, just kind of how that goes and what your book, how it's there for those people that have that passion, but to help them keep the train on the tracks.
I mean, passion is typically what draws us into the sector. It's really what, we've chosen sort of mission-driven work, and we want to make the world a better place, whatever that means for each person. The premise of the book is that in order for the organization to be successful and have the effect that you hope it would have, you're going to need to be successful in a lot of different ways as the leader of the organization. And so it's more than just, and maybe when we get into it, initially, we're really focused on the programs. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to help this group of people. Okay, that's logical. And that's really where my head was at. And then, but as you get into it, you realize you're not just you're running a 501c3 corporation. It's a business. The business has lots of pieces. You have to understand branding, communication, financial management, hiring, firing, managing volunteers, managing donors, managing your board, managing your partnerships, all these things. And so what I want people to do and understand is just to go in with their eyes open, understand that this is going to be what's required of you as the leader. As the organization matures, you might have more and more people that you're able to, spread these responsibilities around, but the organization is going to need to deal with all these things. And you as the leader are going to be either doing them directly or leading other people who have these functional responsibilities. So I think the book is intended to just maybe give people a sense for what might lie ahead and give them some really practical ways forwards, ways that they can be successful, more confident, more competent as they encounter some things for the first time. So, passion is important. If you don't have it, this probably isn't the right business for you. But, I think that fuel burns out at some point in time if you're not able to be successful across a range of skill areas. And the book is one way for you to become more skilled and more competent. The people that are reading the book are kind of taking away a lot of positive things from it. And so I'm delighted by that. And I hope that people don't feel like passion isn't enough is to diminish the importance of passion. I think it's vital. I just want people to understand, like, there's more that's going to be needed over time of you as a leader, and your passion's going to be, fueled, and it's going to attract others to your work, but you're also going to have a lot of other things that you're counted on to be successful with.
Awesome. David, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and doing that. I got one more question. This is just kind of really an opinion. And, like I said, you may touch on it in the book. I just didn't get to that part of it. Do you think it's a good, when we're looking for new board members, is that something that where, like, I know a lot of boards, they have people, they're like, you have to participate in some way. You have to either be have served on a committee, you have to have done volunteerism, you have to do something, there has to be something within the deal other than us just going and saying, hey, I think Trevor would be a good board member. Tell me, can you talk to us about that? Because I think that's one of the things that people struggle with, having those kind of requirements. Or being
I think keeping your board engaged can take a lot of shapes and forms. So one of the things that I would always want to have happen is I want my board members, as an example, to physically see our programs taking place at least once a year. And so I want them to understand the work we're doing. I don't want them to be in the weeds and micromanaging, but if they're not seeing how we do what we do, if they're not hearing from the voices of the people that we are impacting, then they are going to be disconnected at a certain level from what we're all about. And so I want to make sure that my board members are participating in our programs at least once a year, whatever that looks like for each organization. And that's something that I really want to also, we're talking about going around and sharing success stories. It's just saying, hey, Trevor came to our program this past month. Trevor, what did you think? And then Trevor's going to open up and he's going to talk about how amazing our work is. And I've met our staff and I've met our volunteers. I've met some people whose lives have been changed by our work. And now everybody's got all these warm feelings running over them. And they're going to be like, they're not going to feel like this is something I have to do. This is going to be feeling like something I want to do. And you want them to be involved with your programs. You want them to see the work, because the more they see your work, the more passionate they're going to be. And the more they're going to feel comfortable going out and attracting resources and bringing other people to the organization, because they're going to have more like connectivity. They're going to have personal stories and memories, and they're going to want to share those. So I think having people involved in that way is always a positive.
I think that also should really nudge folks and encourage folks to do that with their top donors as well.
100%.
Anonymously. Yeah, they should absolutely see what the work that's going on, and they should be invited to provide feedback, to see it with their own eyes. I think that's massive. That's great. That's great. We have another question.
Yeah, Michelle said, do you believe board members should each have a specific role on the board?
Great question.
Yeah, I'm a believer in each board member participating on at least one committee. Now, if your board is really small, let's say 8 people or fewer, then it starts feeling like all of the same people are on all of the same things, and you can't really have that many committees. But I think a committee structure, whether you have an executive committee, whether you have a development committee, whether you have a governance committee, whatever, a finance committee, some of the more traditional critical committees, everybody needs to be on at least one committee. Again, we talked about board roles and expectations. You bake that into the expectations up front. You outline what the committees are. And in the first conversation you're having with them, you say, do any of these jump out to you? Does any of them feel like you want to know more about? But you don't have to shove them on a committee 5 minutes after they're on the board. But maybe there's an understanding that within 90 days or within a certain period of time, they're going to be on a committee, because they'll get a feel for what the committees are all about. But yes, I think having board members with an additional role or a specific role within the board is important, so that everybody has, some stronger connectivity and clear responsibility, a clear way to have an impact.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Does that help, Michelle? I hope that's good. Okay. Well,
I want to nudge everybody to reach out to David. I want to nudge everybody to reach out to David on LinkedIn as well. Rhino's got his profile ready and linked up. I just want to say, Michelle, if you have any other questions, please reach out, or anyone for that matter. David, I'm putting your business in the street, brother, but
yeah, do it.
I want folks to be able to find you if they have any other follow-up questions. Yeah.
We're going to send this recording out tomorrow. We're also going to put David's email on there. So that way, if you have any questions, you can reach out to him. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. If you want to talk more about this, we obviously have free coaching. Hit the QR code right there. We'll get you set up for that. David, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know Trevor just spoke very, very highly, and all the things. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of your book. Like I said, I was able to kind of speed read through some stuff, but it was really, really good. Very much a how-to. And I think that way. Yeah. Hey, Trevor, let's give away some stuff. Let's. I'm
into giving away stuff. I'm in a great mood. That's awesome. No, let's definitely do it. You want to give away some books?
Yeah, let's give away some books.
Give away some books. But hey,
tell you what, if you're here in person today, I think you ought to get a book. What do you think?
Let's just get a book. Yeah.
So we'll get on everybody here. We'll get your information. We'll get one sent out to you. We'll get Courtney. Will help us with that, and we'll make sure that happens.
We got
as well.
your info. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got your stuff. We'll get you a book sent out, and then I think we ought to give away a trip.
Let's give away a trip.
Okay.
We were going to give away 3 books. Now we're going to give away a bunch of.
Hey, you said
come on, man.
You said you were in a generous mood. I mean, I'm just trying to.
No, it's so great. It's so good. Thank you, Gwen. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you, Jennifer. That's awesome. Yeah, really good. I'm telling you. Yeah, it's just like I couldn't wait to do this one. We had a great. And another thing, Rhino, will you link the episode on Hey Nonprofits that we did with David as well. If you can grab it, brother, that'd be fantastic. Everybody, check out this episode with me and David, and then share it with someone in your network if you don't mind. And also, sorry to keep interrupting, Jay. Check us out, the Hey Nonprofits page. We have a focus page on LinkedIn. Show us some love there if you don't mind. Engage with us, share it, follow the page. It would bring us a lot of joy if you could do that. We'd really appreciate it. We put a lot into these webinars and podcasts, so everyone at HGA would enjoy it. It would also give our guests and the folks that we collaborate with a boost. So
okay, can I give something away now?
I'm going to shut up.
Thank goodness. All right. Kinsey Engine. Kinsey, is Kinsey still in the building? Kinsey, reach up there,
come on,
push
girl.
the spin button. You're going to get to win a trip today that you're going to be able to use your next fundraiser to raise more money.
Far out.
Oh my gosh, a golden ticket. Is that what it is?
Board. Don't give it to your board. No,
yeah.
I'm just joking. That's awesome.
Kinsey, congratulations. You just won a golden ticket. That's a big deal. So you can go help you raise $10,000 at your next fundraiser. So
the easiest way to
about that. Easiest way.
Very cool. Very cool. Wow, that blew my hair back. That was really, really good. Hey, Calvin, I appreciate you saying something about my son, and then tan, and then Jason's hair. What about my hair, man? Come on,
yeah.
Calvin, come on, buddy. Come on, man. Hey, my hair's a magic act, Calvin. So thank you so much for coming again, brother. It's always good to see you. Appreciate you.
Well, mine's a disappearing act, Trevor. So let's keep this conversation.
Well, hey, brother. Hey, you're a published author. You're good. You're playing with house money, man. So it's all. David,
well, guys, thanks so much.
You're the man. That was so cool, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for spending the time with us today.
Yep.
We'll
be here next week. You'll get an email with an invite. Save your spot. David, you're invited. We got some really good friends coming on next week as well. And we can't wait to see you all next Thursday. Amy Myers and Susanna Doyle from MDA are coming. And Jason and those gals are going to do a masterclass on pre-event fundraising. Get money in the door, get money committed for your fund to need before the event even takes place. All that. It's going to be awesome. Really, really cool. And everybody enjoy the book. Reach out to David on LinkedIn. Thanks, David. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks, Jay.
All right. We'll see you.
Everybody have a great Thursday.